Hello, and welcome to the Pro Series Conversations from CheckBox Pro. My name is Missy, and I'm the founder of CheckBox Pro, where we help school leaders become their most efficient and effective selves by matching them with ed-focused executive assistants. Each member of our team has over 10 years of experience in the education sphere, and though we may consider ourselves pros in some areas, we can't be an expert in every area. This is why we are excited to bring folks working in the education space to offer tools, tips, and insights to make the life of a school leader even more sustainable. Markesha Tisby is an independent educational consultant passionate about literacy. Her career began in the classroom where she taught kindergarten and first grade, and she has since broadened her expertise as a response to intervention specialist and master reading teacher. Before founding Tisby Educational Consulting, Markesha was a district literacy specialist and a K English language arts and reading and social studies teaching and learning coach. She is dedicated to mentoring new teachers and collaborating with educators to enhance literacy practices, aiming to boost student engagement and achievement. Markesha holds a Master of Education in Reading from Texas A&M Commerce, a Bachelor of Science in Interdisciplinary Studies from the University of Texas at Tyler, an Associate's degree from Trinity Valley Community College. She was recently inducted into TVCC's Hall of Distinguished Alumni. Mrs. Tisby serves as the president-elect of the Texas Council of Teachers of English Language Arts. And when she isn't crushing it in all of those aforementioned areas, right, she enjoys spending quality moments with her husband, James, and their 2 children. She's an avid reader with a particular fondness for children's literature. Hi, Markesha.
Hi, Missy.
Girl, that bio right there.
Like,
it is lengthy. It's lengthy, and it doesn't even paint the full picture. It doesn't even paint the full picture. So since I know it doesn't paint the full picture, and it's pretty much, a LinkedIn bio, it's a website bio, it's like just the high points. I would just love, I think it's really important for our listeners to understand our guests more intimately and just give us maybe a little bit broader picture of on your background, how you came to be where you are today, founding your own consulting company. And then maybe weave in there, right? Because we're going to focus on phonics and teaching grades K-2. Why is that so important to you? So without further ado, introduce yourself to our listeners a little bit more than what I just gave.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I am a literacy lover. I tell everyone that I work with I'm a nerd when it comes to this work. And so I get really excited. And sometimes I speak very quickly because it's so interesting to me. But growing up, my mom was always with my brother and I. Once upon a time, there were only 2 children. Now there are 6 of us. But when it was just the 2 of us, my dad was working so hard. My mom was able to stay home with us. And because of all the things she did with us, I don't remember a time where I didn't know how to read because she started that work with us so early. And, going into school, loving learning, and people in my family used to call me a bookworm affectionately, and that's just been a part of my identity. But my little brother had to suffer through playing school with me because I just knew that's what I wanted to do. And he always had to be the student because I had to be the teacher. And so that's kind of how my education journey started. But once I started teaching, I spent my classroom time in kinder and first. And so I have a big soft spot in my heart for the foundational years. I love being a part of introducing students to education. And so my prayer was always, if only my territory could be increased and I could help more kids. I can help 20 kids, 22 kids. I've got that. But how can I help more students at a time? And so that led me into working with teachers. And so when a position came open to be someone who provides intervention services, I thought this is great because you start to see trends. So when you think about families, you might teach Shane, and then you teach his little sister Shania, and then you teach Sean, and then you start to see that they have some similar gaps, Or like when I moved to the district level, you're still looking at data and you still start to see some of those same names. And so what I noticed is the gaps that are there. You can see trends within families, you can see trends within grade levels. I mean, and I just, the nerd that I am, I was like, there's got to be like a root cause. But it all boils down to me, to the foundation. And so doing those different roles, I was always on a quest to just help more students. And so in 2020, when a lot of businesses were making really tough decisions, I thought, okay, can I help more students by helping more adults, by helping more schools? And so that's where Tisby Educational Consulting kind of came from. The idea of helping as many educators help as many students as possible. So that is how I got here. That is why I wake up every morning, why I'm so excited to go to work and connect with school leaders and district leaders and educators.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, and I think it's really interesting. And again, I have so many guests on here where you're kind of unique in the sense you've been in education for a really long time, and then now you're finding your way to like make this impact. We have other folks who have kind of done the private business thing and then have found their way into education because they saw other issues, whether it be just not equipped employees,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they're like, oh my goodness, like there's some sort of gap happening here. So it's always fun to see people's journeys. So, well, this topic with today that we're talking about is really personal to me for two reasons. One, I have a daughter in first grade. So we are in that very, very foundational spot that you're going to talk to us through. But then two, I worked at a middle school back in Memphis, and students came to us in sixth grade not knowing how to read at all. And we had to hire she was such a godsend, like her name was Sarah Nelson, and she taught that group of students how to read. And it was all the way back down to the basics. I don't know that I necessarily, as an ops person, didn't know necessarily the term was phonics, but that's what it was, right? Just like trying to get them to catch up. But you're in sixth grade, and it's just like, oh, this is heartbreaking. Like that we are at this place, and what a hurdle that these kids now have to try to overcome, and how much they have to catch up. So from the moment I had my children, like we walked through the threshold of our house, and I was like, and we're going to read. Like every single night, I'm going to read something to you. And it's been something that we've kept going. And now my girls, my oldest, can read, but it has driven so much of my decision-making around school choice, right? Because I'm like, I need to make sure like these are such important years that you know how to read. So
Absolutely.
That's the lens I'm coming to today. And very excited to have you talk, and hopefully maybe I can glean some things, right? Because again, they're still sponges, but I also have a 4-year-old. So like the job's not done yet for me. Like and they are different children. So I got to make sure my 4-year-old, when she gets to that place, is also ready. So, maybe talk to us a little bit about why strong K-2 instruction is so critical for a child's like long-term academic success, and maybe specifically what role phonics plays in that foundation.
Oh, yes. And as an educator and now mom, I totally get where you're coming from.
Okay, I'm not alone.
You are not alone. So when I think about K-2 instruction, the word that will probably come up over and over and over in this episode is foundation. Strong K-2 instruction is critical because it establishes the fundamental building blocks for all future learning, not just reading, like just learning in general. And so in those early years, children not only develop academic skills, but like habits, mindsets, like ways of thinking about themselves that will shape their educational journey, right? So like that's why I love being in that space. Like K-2, I support mostly elementary in general, but like K-2 is my sweet spot. It makes my heart beat fast because I love when a 6-year-old looks at me and says, Mrs. T, I can read. And I'm like, yes, you can. And so as a teacher, I got that all the time, right? But as someone who spends more time with adults than children currently, when though like this happened to me recently with a first grader, let's call him Jacob. Jacob, he looked at me with these big brown eyes and he said, I did it. I can read. And so, like, getting to witness that moment when he used his phonics skills to decode a text and got meaning from it, just priceless. And so, thinking about how phonics plays into that K-2 foundation, a few things come to mind, right? Like, of course, learning how to read and what that means specifically to a 5 or 6 year old. When we think about phonics, we think, oh, letters and sounds. And that is a big part of it, right? They need to understand that there's a relationship between the print or the letter and the sounds. And they're going to use that to decode. And so that's the whole purpose of phonics anyway. Like, we go through all of these little phonetic skills, but the ultimate goal for us as educators is for the students to know how to use all of those things to decode, to look at print, pronounce words correctly, and then of course we'll move into meaning also. But we get to do that. Like, it's a huge part of what we do. Now, phonics instruction continues beyond K2, but we get to set the foundation. And the next thing that comes to mind is just automaticity. Not only do students need to know the phonetic principles, but let's just do something basic. Like, when you see the letter A, you know the name of the letter and you know the sounds that it represents, right? But along with that, we need to be able to do that automatically. So when the students are actually looking at a text and trying to read it, they don't spend so much time trying to connect the relationship between the letter and the sound and putting all of those together, that they have no, like, cognitive resources left to think about what it was that they actually read, but they read each word correctly. And so we get to build automaticity, and that's going to impact them forever, right? Um, but without automaticity, students really, really struggle to understand what they're reading, and they're not able to use what they're reading and the knowledge to make deeper meaning. You know, how can you talk about inferences and connections between multiple texts when you're just trying to understand what it is that's on the page? And so it's so important for us to make sure that we're not just teaching for, like, proficiency, like, oh, yes, they know their letters and sounds, or, you know, they know these phonics principles that we've taught in the past 3 weeks, but do they know them with automaticity that's going to relieve them cognitively to really focus on meaning when they're actually reading a text?
Can I interject one second?
Yes, please, because I'll get on a roll.
Girl. So first of all, let's see if I can say this word, automaticity.
Yes.
Am I saying it right?
Yes,
yeah. Okay.
You are.
Is that interchangeable with fluency? Is fluency and automaticity
There's definitely a connection there.
Okay.
What I hear often is when I'm having conversations with teachers, they will say, hey, we did this screener, we did our middle of the year assessment, and it was online. And they'll say, oh, look at Johnny. Look at Johnny's scores. Like, Markesha, I've been working with him. You've seen him in small groups. Like, he knows this stuff. Is kind of how they'll come to me. But a lot of times their assessments are timed. And so while they're looking at the screen and trying to do all the things up here to, you know, in their minds to process the text or to decode, the screen might have changed to a new word or a new letter. And so, like, they know it because the teachers are like, hey, they know this, but they didn't know it with automaticity. Like, it wasn't rapid enough. And so I feel like that's something that we get to do in K2. We get to spend the time on building that automaticity, which will impact fluency, right? And the rate, because, you know, when you think about fluency, is not just rate, you know, but it's also like intonation and phrasing and expression and all of that. But rate is a part of it. And so while we have the opportunity to really shore that up, I think we should lean into it in K2. So,
got it.
So thinking about, like, helping students understand the basic relationships between letters and sounds and more complex. It's not just letters and sounds, but, like, that's something that everyone understands, right? But automaticity, but then also the work that we do in K2 we know we're setting the foundation, but we get to help students become better readers as they read, right? I love this, and you can tell I'm geeking out a little bit, but this is who I am. We hear a lot of people and organizations, even politicians, talk about the fact that students need to be reading on grade level by third grade, or they're at a higher risk of maybe not graduating high school, and even worse. Like, there's all of this data that supports that idea. And so in my mind, it's like a no-brainer. What comes before third grade? K-2 or pre-K-2, right? Like, so let's kind of lean into the fact that if we are supporting students and setting them up for success in K-2, when they get to third grade, it won't be a surprise how they perform, you know? And then thinking about the fact that if they feel like readers in those early grades, they'll read more. You mentioned your daughter, right? So if a child, typically, if a child feels confident in their reading abilities, they will read more voluntarily. And when they do that, they're expanding their vocabulary, they are building background knowledge, and all of these things will impact their comprehension. And so it's like, man, I always say big work. And I know a lot of words, but big is the only one that feels right. We have big work to do in K-2 to ensure that strong phonics instruction happens and helps to make sure that our students will reach that pivotal like benchmark of reading on grade level by grade 3. And so when you think about what crucial role does phonics play um, in this like foundation setting that we're trying to do, I just think we are building confidence. And I always tell parents and educators that confidence is half the battle. Like, if we can help a child feel like a reader, feel like a writer, that will impact all of their subject areas, right? Because the reading and the thinking that we do in a reading and language arts classroom, and let's say a third grader walks across the hall to a science class, they have to use all of that knowledge. They have to decode, they have to comprehend, they have to have some background knowledge, they have to know a lot about vocabulary. Like, it just goes across the hall. And I just think we have a lot of responsibilities, but also it's such a privilege to be a part of setting students up academically for life. And so I always say students' lives are at stake. And that's why I'm just so passionate about it. And I feel like K-2 is incredibly important, but then specifically thinking about like foundational literacy, it's called foundational literacy for a reason. Like, we get to set them up from the start as successful readers and writers.
Yeah. I love that connection to confidence, like just that academic confidence, because I think you're right. That is half, if not more than half the battle, right? Of just like getting kids to believe that they have the ability to learn. And I think about my daughter who's been quicker on the reading aspect, and then we struggle but she's a little bit slower to pick up some of the concepts in math, right? And it's came home on a report card. But what I love about what I'm seeing is she's already making the connection. She goes, but it was hard for me to read, but I practiced and now I can read. And she goes, yeah, it's a little bit hard for me with these math concepts, but I think if I just practice more, I'll get it. Right. And so it's like that, even she is seeing that it takes work and it's not a fixed, oh shoot, what is that? Like, there's a term for fixed versus, I don't know, but like, just like, it's like a fixed mindset versus
this going to drive growth
mindset. Yeah. Okay. Maybe it's that, like, but yeah, so she has a growth mindset. She has this, like, this sense of, there's opportunity for me to get better here versus, oh, I don't get it now, I'm not going to ever get it.
Right. And shutting down.
It's that shutting down, right? And so that's such an interesting thought too, of like, yeah, if we can get them confident, and maybe for some kids, like, it's the confidence comes first in their math, right? But again, if we're able to translate, hey, but you're picking up these concepts because of effort and attention and whatever that might be, we can translate that to these other areas and build all of it and you as a whole student and not just one content area. What are some misconceptions then about teaching phonics? And I'm going to say maybe misconceptions because did you hear that like whole sold a story?
I did.
I kind of stumbled into it. And again, you feel for all these parents because especially those that they're in kindergarten, first grade, in kindergarten, I mean, in second grade, in the middle of COVID, right? And so they're like, I have no idea what should or should not be taught. And then now, they're kind of getting their eyes open to like, oh, wait, I thought we were doing phonics, but now we're not doing fine. I think hopefully we're come back full circle. Have we come back full circle, Markesha, back to phonics?
I think, yes. And I think that a misconception in itself is that I don't know of a place, I'm just going to say a place, very general, where anyone opted out of teaching phonics ever. I personally believe that there were many opportunities to do it better.
Okay.
So I don't know. I have a real hard time with the idea that we just weren't teaching phonics. Like educators, literacy educators, teachers, districts. I'm like, how would that be possible? But I do believe that there have been opportunities to elevate instruction and kind of elevate phonics in general. But yeah, I think we are on the right track in literacy. What I get the opportunity to go in classrooms and see really amazing things. And even in really amazing classrooms, I think, oh, what if we did this a little more? Or what if we gave a little less time to this? Like, I will probably watch this podcast back and go, I should have, because that's how we are. Like, we can tweak things. I should have said more about this, or I should have pulled back about this, or why was I speaking so quickly when I was talking about X, Y, and Z? But that's what we get to do in education also. Like, we're always effective educators are always learning and growing and refining and reflecting. And I think when we think about literacy as a whole, and specifically phonics, we have things that we can tweak, and we've always had things that we could tweak. So, but I think some of the discussions have really moved us in a direction that is positive.
Well, that's good. Okay. Yeah. So then what are some of those shifts? Thank you. I'm glad. What are some shifts then that educators can make to be more effective at teaching phonics, or, what do some of those shifts look like for?
You can tell right now, a lot of things come to mind, but just a couple. Just thinking about not allowing your phonics instruction to be kind of taught in isolation and so teacher directed that your student engagement just drops. Like, phonics instruction does not have to be boring and like monotone, because it's like, oh, it's just rules, and it's very like, you have to know this, and you have to know this, you have to know this. But I would say a shift to a more effective approach would be integrating phonics instruction within all of your literacy context. So when you think about like an ELAR block or reading block, you can embed your phonics into all of that, the other parts. And so when you think about a phonics lesson that's teacher directed and it's isolated, you're looking at your resource and you're just reading from it, and it can easily become like drill and kill, so like, we're listening for short vowel sounds, and so I'm going to say a word and I'm going to listen for a middle vowel sound that's short, and the teacher might say cup. Oh, I hear in the middle. Let's write that word, C-U-P. Now you write that word, and the kids might have their dry erase boards out, and that's awesome, and their markers, and they're writing the words, and then they do 10 more. But like, what is the student really getting from that lesson? Like, carpal tunnel. Like, that's it. Because they are not really getting to be a part of it. The teacher is doing most of the work and most of the talking, and then they go on to the next part of their day. But what if we invited the students into the learning? We had them talking, we had them moving, we had them listening and sharing some of their thinking. Like, there's definitely a portion of a lesson where I feel like the voice that you should hear is the teacher, like during that direct teacher instruction. But also, you're going to invite them into the guided practice piece and let them be involved. We know that explicit and systematic phonics instruction is necessary, and it is necessary and important, but we have to apply this new learning into the next thing, like connected text. So where they get to see those phonics principles used over and over in words, and now we're going to read a few words, or we're going to read a few sentences. Maybe we're going to write a few words and write a few sentences. That's connected to what we're learning across the hall in science, or later this afternoon in science, or thinking about making it more multisensory. So you're not just sitting and getting, there's movement, man. I feel like I need to learn ASL because I'm always like, I always taught my students motions for things like, oh, for this word, we're going to do this motion or whatever. But they're not just sitting. And there may even be opportunities to use games and even technology. Like, it does not have to be boring. We can elevate our instruction by not being so teacher directed for the entire portion, and also using your phonics principles beyond the phonics block. Like, it's just not your 30 minutes or your 45-minute phonics block. You got to use that to read, and you got to use that to write. And so helping students do that, I think, will make their phonics instruction more effective.
Yeah. Do you see phonics continuing past like second grade, or it? I'm just trying to think, right? So we've got a couple probably different types of listeners, right? You've got those that are K-2, which, you know, and again, every school is different in how they structure their classes. But if from my time, right, my K-2 was the same teacher all day. And then I think it was in third grade where I started to have like a humanities teacher and then like a STEM or math science teacher, right? And so then I at least now had two different teachers. So then they, in theory, would be on the same team. So with that in mind, and like thinking through how to weave phonics in, like imagine a K-2 teacher has a little bit more control, right? Because they know, okay, I'm teaching this phonics lesson for my phonics, and then I know everything else I'm teaching today, right? And so I can be a little bit strategic, not easy. Hear me, listeners, right? Not easy, but there's some intentionality and control that that teacher gets to have in how they weave phonics throughout their day and into their other subjects. Have you worked with teachers in that 3 through 5 age group where they are now having to work as a team and figure out how do we teach phonics if we still need to for our third graders, and then how are we weaving that through into your lessons? Maybe what are some tips that you see for those types of teams or teachers?
So I do see a lot of phonics instruction in K-2, and often 3 is also. But when you think about our standards, like, we still have more complex skills that extend beyond those early grades. When you think about like decoding multisyllabic words and like inflectional endings and like all these things that impact meaning, like, it just gets more complex. But when you think about working with teammates, I know that the time where we get together with teams is so valuable, and you have a lot of things to discuss. But I would love to elevate phonics in those conversations. So what's the last 3 skills you've taught and you've been working on, and thinking about how can you weave that in? So maybe you've recently taught words with inflectional endings and vowel teams. So like AI and EE and OA, like, talking with your teammates about those skills, and then maybe, and this will feel weird at first, but sitting down and brainstorming some words that would follow those phonetic principles and match the content. So I think about like a first grade classroom that is, and maybe they are, I just totally lost the word. Maybe they're not self-contained, and maybe they have a partner in first grade, and that is becoming more and more prevalent. So maybe they're learning about the life cycle of plants across the hall. And on this side of the hall in phonics, we have taught recently words with inflectional endings or suffixes like ing or ed, and a few new ways to spell long vowel sounds. So like maybe adding an E to the end of the word that is silent, that changes the middle vowel to a long sound, or those vowel teams that we just talked about. So to sit in a team meeting or a PLC and think about that might feel a little awkward, but if you think about like dig, we had to dig a hole to plant our seed, or maybe we said we were digging a hole, so there's a word. Or maybe about seed that has EE to make the long E sound, right? You're cracking me up. But like, when could we provide those opportunities? Another thing I love about this work is we get to be as strategic as we want to be when we're doing this thinking. So if we want to write in response to something we read or something we did in any other content area, we can still rely on this. But as the adult in the room, pre-plan it. What do you want the class to compose? And how can you infuse some of those words that follow those phonetic principles? So even if it meant you and your teammate sat down and you generated a list of words that align with the content and phonics principles, and then just tried. It might not be beautiful and it might not feel seamless in the beginning, but you will get better at it. Go ahead and jot down, like if you're going to write a paragraph, say, I want my second graders to write a paragraph about what we've done so far and observed with the plants that we planted in our classroom, or we're writing a thank you note to the principal because it's authentic for purchasing all the seeds and all the soil and all the resources. Like what might we say? And then we can plan it with our partner. And then when we have a conversation with students where we invite them to help generate the ideas, then we can just kind of finesse it and say, oh, I think what you're saying is, thank you so much for buying the seeds for our unit or whatever. And then we lean into seeds. Like we just kind of, I love, like a good friend of mine says that people always say manipulate as if it's a bad word, but it's not. We got to manipulate the conversation a little bit so we get to the message that we want to write that includes those phonics principles. And so it's possible. It's very possible.
Yeah. That's really clever. I like, we are doing plant cycle stuff. Like they come home and they're like STEM. And I'm like, yeah, we know STEM. That's part of the plant. And they did all the things. I'm like, yes, this makes sense.
Do you notice that S blend, the blend at the beginning of the word, ST, right? And then like that's a whole thing.
Yeah. My daughter is it's not diagramming sentences, but it's like the words like above it, she'll do like she has to loop if it's joint sounds or like a root word versus, and it's, I mean, and she does it now. Talk about automaticity, right? She does it so like we do spelling words and she's just like, and I'm looking at her spelling list after she's written everything. And I'm like, what? Like we do dashes and we do little things and like little, again, I didn't do this growing up. So this is very foreign to me, but it is imprinted in her brain now where she's just like, I know what these sounds and these combinations mean. And I know, and it's like, I think it will serve her very well, probably better. She'll end up being a better reader than I will because she will understand so many of the rules and how those letters interact and interrelate to one another, which is really cool to see. So
yes, and then she'll move away from those. Like the marking right now is serving her well, and as she progresses, she won't need to mark them anymore, but she'll still see them or make the connection. Yeah, I love that. That's great.
Yeah. So are there any other practical, maybe high impact strategies that K-2 teachers can start using like right away? Like imagine they don't have a Markesha in their corner that is teaching them like this professional development, but they know and truly believe like the importance of phonics within their instruction. What are some things that, or for those like first year baby teachers who are like, I really want to be good at this and it is just going to take a lot of work. Yeah. So what are some quick, maybe any additional strategies that they can incorporate really easily and almost immediately?
So if they're not utilizing dictation, like guided spelling practice, I would love for them to try it out right away. So think about I'm going back to my short vowel, I guess that's where my brain is today. If you're working with students on decoding CVC words like a consonant, a vowel, consonant and the vowel is short. So let's say SIP, like SIP. If you've been working on short vowels and you taught your lesson, you've done the teacher like direct instruction, you have had the students to try reading some of those words, then the next step would be, now let's write some of these words. So we're moving from decoding to encoding. And what you might do is say, okay, we're all about some hands-on multi-sensory. We've got our dry erase boards out, markers, and we're ready to rock and roll. The first word I want you to write is sip. And you have the students repeat after you. What's that word? Sip. Let's count the sounds. There are 3 sounds. Now we're going to write the word. Everyone, what's the word again? Because, little ones, they've gone somewhere else in their brain.
Yep.
Everyone says it again. That word is sip. What was the first sound? And everyone, now you write the first letter, and they're writing it. And then you would just continue that process until you've written the whole word. Now, I love to slide your finger back onto the word and read it again. So you didn't spend 30 to 45 minutes on a new idea or principle and reading some words, but you also leaned into writing also to kind of cement that understanding, because we want students going back and forth. Because ideally, most of the time, students read like they write and write like they read, but there's not always a balance, and the writing part tends to be where the struggle is. So if there's a little bit off balance, it's usually the reading and writing is not level, and we can do that through some dictation work. And you could also dictate sentences. Just do one word at a time. So maybe you practice sip and kid and, I'm thinking short I words. And then you did the sentence, Kip did sip it, right? So now you're going to use and listen for those short vowel sounds and write a sentence. What that does for students is they get to read and they get to write, and then we start to put some context to give them a little bit of meaning work. And the next layer of that, now you hear a lot about connected text. So we practice this new skill, and now let's read text that has this skill prevalent, all over it.
Yeah.
So a lot of people go straight to decodable text, which are great, but sometimes it just might be 2 to 3 sentences that now students can practice reading. And I say teacher generated. Again, sit down, generate a list of words that follow that phonetic principle, and maybe loop in what you taught last week also, and now make some sentences, just so they can practice this. Do this with your teammates, because you're doing the same work. And say, and then can we also include after? That's a high frequency word that I have so many kids still struggling with. And let's put that in those sentences, so that then you've got the dictation, your guided spelling practice, and then you have the connected text that might be teacher generated sentences that's on a piece of chart paper that you read often. And then, of course, if you have decodable books, so the readers that match the phonic principles in your building or in your classroom, you're not sure how to use those, don't let them sit on the counter and collect dust. Pull those babies out and start to take a look at them. And if you're not sure, use them whole group. At the end of your lesson, you've done all of that work with short vowels. Now let's read a book with short vowels. And let's do that together. Yeah, I can go on and on, but I think the last thing I would say is think about small groups, because we sometimes think that because phonics is so important and every student has to learn all these letters and all these sounds and all these principles, that it can be just one size fits all. And I don't know in any industry where one size fits all really works. And so thinking about how some students might learn a principle day one, they've got it. And then you have another group where it's man, they just need multiple opportunities. Well, think about providing those opportunities in a small group and really thinking about how the students perform during your lesson, taking notes. I'm the queen of stickies. My teachers and coaches will tell you, she always has stickies, big ones, small ones, translucent ones, but jotting down those notes so that you can take a look and say, hey, every time I had them show me their dry erase board, these 3 students made the same errors. I might pull the 3 of them and kind of go back through and extend the learning or review or reteach based on their needs.
Teaching's really hard. I just always come back to that. I just do. And it's for any teachers out there listening, your job is really hard. And just, being so responsive to student needs it's just and there's just no shortcut. There's just no shortcut for it. And so just keep pushing and know that it will eventually stick. It just will take a lot of repetition.
A lot of repetition, and more for phonics than I feel other parts of our ELAR block or reading block. I will say that when you say it's hard, it really is. And that's why the visual that we see now in a lot of places, like the simple view of reading. Like, I think it's a great visual to show how complex it is, but just the title, people who are outside of the profession think, oh, it's simple. I saw that simple view of reading. There's nothing simple about the work that teachers are doing to teach kids how to read. There's nothing simple about it. But it's also like a little puzzle that excites me, because every child that sits in front of you needs something a little different, and being responsive really is the name of the game.
Yeah. All right, we're running up on time, and I just am like, I could talk to you about this forever again, because I'm coming from so much of it as a mom perspective. I'm like, okay, what can I do at home that's like reinforcing these things? But what else? Like, is there anything that you're just like, oh my goodness, I cannot get off this podcast without telling the listeners, whether that is the parent out there or the teacher out there or the instructional leader out there, like they need to know this when it comes to K-2 instruction, or more specifically phonics, that you just would really want to make sure they walk away with that we've missed?
And just one thing, I would say that it's really hard to narrow it down. You might have to invite me back. No, I think the one thing I want, I would love the listeners to take away is continuing, when you're thinking phonics, to give students multiple opportunities. Phonics is not, you hear it once, you try it, you got it, you move on. Like, we tend to, like, when you look at a lot of like pacing or like scope and sequence, when you look at how the principles are paced throughout the year, it's like we taught this and we move on. We have to circle back and think cumulative. We need cumulative review, cumulative reteaching as necessary, and then cumulative assessment. Like, we didn't even talk about that. Like, circling back and continuing to give students multiple opportunities, because learning decays over time if it's not used. So think about how we used to have spelling tests, where you memorize these words all week and then you make a 100, because that's the kind of students we were. And then 3 weeks later, you might be saying, man, I know that was a word, but I don't remember how to spell that word. It's the same way with our phonics instruction. Give students chance after chance after chance after chance to use and practice a skill that you taught 4 weeks ago, so that it really becomes solid. And then we get to that automaticity that we talked about earlier. So it's not one and done. And don't feel frustrated when your students aren't successful after hearing the 4 different ways you've taught them to use the letter Y in a word in the past 2 days. Like, don't get frustrated, because they need so many opportunities to try again, and they will get there.
Love that. All right, Markesha, I have one final question for you as we wrap up. Okay. And it is in the spirit of my company's name, CheckBox Pro. You ready? What is one box, big or small, personal or professional, that you hope to check off today?
Well, I have not, and I love a checkbox and a checklist. I just love all of this. I have not been able to pick my son up from school in about 2 weeks. So I'm very excited to be the person he sees when his teacher walks him out today. And I'm like, yes, that's exciting.
I love that. That's a great one. That is a great one. I dropped my children off today, and I might have dropped my 4-year-old off without shoes. We walked into the building today with no shoes. We just had one of those days, Markesha. So I hope that your pickup goes better than my drop off this morning.
Oh, my goodness.
But I'm sure it will. Everybody loves to see mom at pickup. It feels so special. Yes. All right. Well, listeners, hey, you can connect with Markesha on LinkedIn, or you can schedule a consultation with her at tisbyconsultant.com. Okay, we'll put all of these links in our episode notes. I will also be including in our episode notes some of the recommended readings that she sent to me in advance. So if you're looking for ways to increase your knowledge around phonics or literacy-focused instruction, these are some go-tos. Markesha, because you said you're a children's literature lover, can you tell us again, what would be a good go-to fun children's book to be reading that is that, or maybe you just recently read? I'm putting you way on the spot. I know.
There is now. Okay, I love children's books, but I Am Ruby Bridges. Now
I've seen this.
I don't know if you can see this, but if you're listening, there's a picture of me when I got to meet Miss Ruby Bridges. And as a former first grade and kindergarten teacher, I love teaching my students that you can make an impact on the world even if you're not yet a grown-up. And so I just have a fondness for her, and I have a lot of books about her, but this is one of the newest ones. It's I Am Ruby Bridges, and it's how the subtitle, how one 6-year-old girl's march to school changed the world. And I've read so many books about her and her story, and even heard her speak, but this one, it's like written from the perspective of a 6-year-old. And as a mom, you'll probably appreciate like the humor, because it's like, Ruby's an old name. Only old ladies are named Ruby. Like, these are the things that I think 6-year-olds would, like how they would think. And so she did a really fantastic job. And the illustrations are by Nicholas Smith. Amazing.
Okay. I think I might be ordering. I'm going to go buy it right now. And also for our listeners who are not like viewing this, her copy of I Am Ruby Bridges is like covered with sticky notes. I just need you all to know and be able to experience what I'm also experiencing in the moment. Because my children's books at home are not covered in sticky notes with notes about probably phonics and how to teach this and what kind of guiding questions I'm going to ask my students. But I love that. I love that so much. And 6, I've got a 6-year-old, so I need to get this ASAP.
It's great.
She'll love that. Well, big thank you to you, Markesha, for chatting with me today. And, thank you for the work that you're doing. It's really important. And I know the teachers you're working with are thankful for you. So listeners, thank you for joining us. And then until next time, everybody have a great day.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to today's Prose Series conversation. Our team is always looking for more pros to learn from in the field of education. So if you have a recommendation for a future guest, or maybe you are the pro, then send us a note at info@checkboxpro.com. And if you want to hear from more pros, then like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss an episode. And by doing so, this also helps more folks find our show. So take a moment to check that box off your list today.